Sorry about that, guys. I've been having a lot of weird internet problems, Spectrum cable. So we dropped our stream before, but we're picking right back up in the middle of the ground rules. So we're talking Pilot Bootcamp, 6 weeks to write your whole idea from beginning to end, suggesting you do not write time travel, adaptations, true stories, or anything that requires a huge amount of work, research, or getting it just right, or you're going to make someone mad at you, or getting it just right, or you're going to not adequately do justice to someone's story, or something like that. All of these things are standing in your way. Be really careful with complicated elements or elements that are complicated to keep track of or keep straight on the page. Anything with multiple copies of the same characters, especially if there's times in those stories when we deliberately don't know which of the two of those character copies we're looking at. So your Battlestar Galactica, your Deadringers, and things like this, where we're obfuscating who is who of the copies of the people, everything, everywhere, all at once. Anything with multiple timelines or parallel universes or complex structures of interlocking flashbacks or things like that. Don't write Dark, that German Netflix show, as your first pilot. You will hate your life and it will be miserable. Somebody in the chat is saying, I'm going to do time travel. Every time someone takes it as a challenge, and no one has ever finished a time travel script. Maybe that encourages people even more, so I'll stop saying that. But no one has finished a time travel script in a boot camp, even once. Even finished it. That's how much you shouldn't do time travel. But be my guest, be the first. Emerge into the no man's land full of corpses and say, I won't be hit. Okay, last thing though, it's a good time to take a big swing and write something weird or funny while building these skills or fundamentals. If you don't gravitate towards things that you consider to be weird or funny, just consider this a time where you're more free than you normally are. Although it feels like there's a lot of rules and constraints and guidelines and stuff like this, when you're not a professional, you can write whatever you want. You can pick a musical. You can write a musical western. Obviously, I wouldn't write a musical if it's one of your first scripts. That's going to add a whole extra layer there. But you can write a show. What if they did a show about a lawyer who was a demon lawyer? Oh wait, didn't they do that? It was called Angel. Or you could do one about a hippo that makes friends with a beaver. I just picked that out of nowhere, but you can kind of do that. If you're just trying to find something fun that keeps you excited, you can say, gosh, I love action movies like Die Hard. I would love to see an action show, but that's set in, let's say, a steampunk world. Let's do like a John McClane in a steampunk world show. That sounds awesome. And I barely tried at all there. See, it's not that hard to come up with good comps because you know what you like and you've seen a lot of things that you like before. So you can just pick two things that you like and try to find a way to make them work together. If you really want to, you can say, I love spy shows. I also love medical shows. What would a medical spy show be? Is it like an underground hospital for spies of all nations? That sounds cool. Kind of like Hotel Artemis a little bit, but maybe there's something there, or maybe it's about the, emergency trauma response in the CIA, or something like that. That's a medical spy show. So find a way to make it work. There's almost always some way to make these mashups of things you've seen before work into something else that works. By taking two things that work, often we will get something else that works in a different way. Sometimes it's completely unclear what that would be. If you're picking like a kids movie and a Tarantino movie, sometimes we just have no idea what you mean, right? Like if you're doing Mango Unchained and it's about a bunch of talking fruit that are escaping from slavery and trying to kill their masters or something, we might just be like, okay, that sounds like a Newgrounds cartoon. I guess it could work. It sounds ridiculous. You have to kind of be specific about the tone you want, and sometimes the important part of comps is to set the tone and to make it clear what you've made and to whom it would appeal. And if it's not doing those things, then something might be off. And if you're picking comps that are way too obscure, that no one knows, it's not a great time to show off, because you don't get any bonus points for someone not knowing what your comps are. It's like telling a joke that someone doesn't understand. Like, are you smarter than them because you got it and they didn't? Maybe, but at the end of the day, was it worth it? They didn't laugh. Okay, somebody pitched in the chat, VeggieTales plus Django Unchained. Okay, maybe it's there. Radically different comps suggest a strange tone. If you said you're doing VeggieTales and Django Unchained and it's really serious, then I would suddenly be like, what? Because that sounds comedic, right? Like you could say Sausage Party is kind of that vibe of like a kids movie kind of world with an adult type of sensibility or something like that. But at the end of the day, the comedic sensibility, I would say, controls that movie. When it's not like purporting to be a really important examination of, the slaughterhouse industry or anything like that. So try not to confuse us before we've even read the logline. If you don't have an idea, just try something weird, something that'll get you excited. The goal is not to write a good show. Don't come with a passion project. Passion projects tend to not get done, and if they do, they tend to not be done that well, because usually you're going into it's like your first couple things that you try to make are your longtime passions, and then they just don't pan out, or they don't pan out like you wanted them to, and maybe you get stuck and can't ever finish it because you're like, well, I can tell it's not panning out right. You need to be picking stuff early on that you can finish, whatever that means. Last little notes, it can be tough to hear notes, even at the early stage. It's never us saying your show can't possibly work. You shouldn't write it. We're never saying you shouldn't write it. You can write whatever you want. I'm going to give you my honest, and Nacho and other people here will give you their honest feedback and try to help you as much as they can. Nacho and I have done this, I think, probably 1 trillion times, so we're kind of good at giving this developmental level feedback. You don't have to take it. We're never going to check to make sure you do. You are never being, held at gunpoint to make sure you follow our revisions. We don't care. Like, we're not, it's your script. I'm just trying to help you the best way that I know how. So don't take the notes personally. Learn to accept notes and roll with the punches and try to assess things like, what is the note behind the note? And use this as a time to actually work on taking notes as a skill and responding to notes as a skill. No one's perfect at it. People make mistakes. I'm not always the best at it. No one's always the best at receiving. It's a sensitive thing to be receiving notes on something you work very hard on. Ideally, you will be working very hard on it, though. I will just add, there's not a lot of point in getting feedback on something that, or when I will say, once you've gotten all your ducks in a row, you don't have to get feedback on your pages every single week. You can bring pages to lab and get scenes checked or things like that if you really, really want to, but it's usually best to take your honest swing at it and then come back and try to get feedback. I would recommend against getting feedback in the middle of working on something, unless you think there might be a big problem or you're having trouble making everything click. You don't have to get things looked at just to get them looked at, though, I guess I mean to say. And lastly, I would say, if you're going to persist beyond just the free weeks, use a real name, or use your real name. Ideally, you can use the nickname or middle name or something like that if you really want to, but in the industry, you're not using screen names. You can use a pseudonym, obviously, in the industry. So if you want to use a pseudonym, just start using that now. But in any case, after the free classes, we ask that you not use a screen name and use a real name. We won't make you do that now, but just keep that in mind for later. Thank you for that link to that new stream, Nacho. And again, if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Kick, or is there one more? Did I miss one? All those different places, you can find us on Discord by going to scriptcamp.net. And if you open the top right link, you'll find that blue button that says login. You can use that to get a link to our Discord server and join our community and attend many more classes and events and workshops like this. Okay, I'm not going to host this as a discussion at the moment. I will just say these boot camps are generally geared towards writing something brand new. And not writing first of all, definitely not a passion project, but probably not a rewrite of something. If you really want to bring a rewrite, we won't stop you, and we will give you little tips here and there on how to do that. But all of the courses that are called simply Feature Bootcamp or Pilot Bootcamp or Novel Bootcamp are specifically focused around writing something brand new from beginning to end. We will have tips for you, but we won't go way out of our way to accommodate the rewrite. Okay, so a little about shows, and I will just remind everyone of the things that we're trying to work on. So you should have your sketchbook open in a new tab. Instead of playing your Minecraft in the other tab, I would recommend have your sketchbook open and be writing down things like title, genre, format and time slot, comps, series and pilot loglines, or at least your first best try at those things. You can write out a bunch of different comps if you aren't sure which to pick, but you're ultimately going to want to narrow that down to 2. In terms of genres, it's the same thing. You want to pick 2 genres at the most. Don't be writing, it's a fantasy, comedy, western, sci-fi, because we're just going to get lost and not understand what it is anymore. So you're going to want to boil it down to 2 things at the most. Even shows that have a lot of stuff in them, like a lot of things going on in, what did people mention? Lost is one of their favorite shows. There's so much going on in Lost. And at times there's comedic moments here and there. There's things you laugh at. So is it a sci-fi, fantasy, horror comedy? No, it's a sci-fi mystery show, right? We have to kind of just take the basics and be a little reductive. We can't include, like, every little tone doesn't need to be included in the list of genres. Okay, so be answering these questions because you can share this in the second half of class, which starts in, obviously, 10 minutes is when the second half starts. And I'll call for folks to share what they have, and if they want to ask questions or get feedback on any of these elements of their pilot in progress, then that would be the time. Okay, so hopefully we're all working on that. Just the absolute basics of TV writing. Shows in the US are usually written by staffs, which consists of a hierarchy of writing producers. Producers are writers in American TV. There's also staff writers, which is like the lowest ranking level writer, and they're usually not supposed to talk that much. I've even had a friend say, it seems like anybody could be a staff writer because you're supposed to mostly listen, follow instructions, and not disrupt the flow of the room and things like that. Once you go through your first season, usually you're going to be bumped from staff writer up a little bit higher. There are other things like story producer, or other various titles like that which exist in the hierarchy, which are all types of producer, but basically showrunner is at the very top. Showrunner being the head of writing and also head of production. They are the heart of the show. They are the show. They still answer to executive producers, though. The number of staff writers can vary anywhere from 2 to 3 on shorter shows or limited series or things like that, all the way up to, up 15 writers on late night stand-up or big sitcoms. Comedy rooms are bigger than drama rooms. We will very quickly go on this, and we won't go on about it too long. Spec refers to a few things. Spec means speculative. In features, a spec is a script that you've written not on commission, just on your own, with the express purpose of using it as a writing sample or using it to get work or trying to get it produced one day. In TV, a spec episode is like a fan fiction episode of an existing show. And usually when people say TV specs, this is what they mean. There's not that many reasons to write these anymore. They're fun to write. I've written 4 of them, I think, when I was first learning to write scripts. So this would be back in 2010, 2011, 2012 was when I first started doing this. Or when did Fargo come out? I remember I wrote one of those as well. I think that must have been 2014 or 15 when Fargo season 1 came out. So I wrote an episode of Cougar Town, Wilfred, Fargo, and did I do one more? I definitely did one more. I can't remember at the moment. But there's not that many reasons to write these now except to enter some contests and fellowships like the Nickelodeon Writers Fellowship and things like that, and the NBC Writers on the Verge, and they have a list of shows that you have to pick from, so you can't just pick whatever you want. Generally, don't do those. Generally, you want to write spec pilots, which refer to speculative pilots, usually just called pilots, the original first episode of a theoretical series that does not exist and will almost certainly not exist. So stop planning the progression of season 3 and its greatest hits, Don't worry about what's going to happen later down the line. Don't hold your best ideas back for that's going to happen later. It's going to happen later. There is no later. Nobody's reading more if the pilot does not impress them. And it's very difficult to write a good pilot. Don't worry about the rest of the show. You don't get a rest of the show. There is no show. There is only a pilot. Don't worry. Don't waste your brain energy on things like, what if this does get picked up, though? What if one day it does happen? What somehow get made? I will let you know. The industry is in the worst point it has been in decades right now, and even before that, this was one of the hardest fields to break into and one of the most exclusive and difficult types of writing that you can possibly do in one of the hardest, smallest pool of employee job. I hope you see what I'm saying. It's very, very difficult to be a writer, and you're starting to do this at one of the worst possible times you could be attempting to do this. You're not going to get a show. Don't worry about it. You're trying to write good pilots, and you're trying to learn to write good pilots. The goal is not to come fully formed out of the womb with a stack of amazing scripts. You have to write the bad ones. You have to write the clunky ones. Some of them will work. Some of them won't. Some you can revise. Some you don't have to. You can leave them behind in the dust. So I would try to readjust to this mentality of I'm going to have to write a lot of scripts and read a lot of scripts. You absolutely have to be reading a lot of scripts too. Can't stress that enough in order to build the skills you need to have this career. It's a very, very, very demanding and difficult career. This is not a career you can luck into. It's not something you can do by accident, and it's not something you can do if you only kind of care about it a little bit as a hobby. This is a career you're only going to have if you dedicate a significant portion of your life to this. And that's great. If that sounds good to you, then you're in the right place. If that sounds terrible to you, you definitely don't want to be a TV writer. You don't want to, I guess what I'm saying overall, you don't a little bit want to be a TV writer. You do or you don't. There's a couple ways. One track is by starting off as an assistant office PA, move up to writer's PA after a couple years perhaps, or one if you're lucky. Move up from writer's PA to showrunner's assistant or writer's assistant. probably writer's assistant, then showrunner's assistant, and then from there, you have the potential to be able to write an episode, and if they really like it and they are happy with your sample, they can staff you on that show. This takes years to go down this track, and a lot of grunt work and a lot of getting people coffee and cleaning the counters off and taking the trash out and doing, like, seriously, it's like unskilled labor. It will not be that fun to start out doing this. You'll be making copies, driving around town, doing things like that as a writer's PA to build the trust and the connections that you need before you will be able to be promoted again and again. But then again, if that sounds good to you and you like that structure and having that more solid track to go down, then maybe that is the right move for you. You do have to be in Los Angeles if you want to do that. The other track of becoming a TV writer, get really, 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 really good at writing pilots. The nice thing about starting as an assistant, you don't have to start out really good. You will be mentored and trained to some extent. You do have to do a lot of work on your own, but it's like you don't have to start out you don't have to be an amazing writer to be an assistant. The goal also might be to fill out your portfolio with other things like stand-up plays, web series, sketches, horror shorts, whatever else is in your genre. And then hopefully in some ways those might get managers or agents' attentions too. There's really no point in getting those meetings with the managers and agents if you are not a fantastic writer, though. Well, you're first of all not going to get meetings with them unless something you've done has really stood out or you've written an amazing script, right? If you have a web series that has millions of views, you might be able to get meetings that way. Or if you have stand-up that sells out house shows and things like that, if you have an amazing improv team or something along those lines, maybe you can like build up clout in one way in order that you might catch attention and be able to leverage it into a TV writing career, partially because TV is considered so much a field concerned with who you are more so than just what you've done. Like feature writing isn't as much about who you are unless you're writing incredibly culturally specific things. Like if you want to write a show about the Asian American coming of age experience in Los Angeles, something like that, then your identity and who you are would really matter in terms of a feature. If you are writing TV, though, it is almost more important than the writing, or it's weighed with like equal importance to the writing, you could say. So who you are, where you come from, your background, upbringing, personality, all those things matter a lot because TV writing is a very extremely social job. This is not for recluses and those who want to do writing at home on your own, in your attic, locked up with your Mountain Dew in the chicken tendy cave. You're not going to get all the experience you need, the social skills you need, and ultimately the relationships that you need to make and maintain in order to be a working TV writer. So get used to this idea of very, very social writing, taking notes, collaborating, offering notes and ideas. Don't be a jerk. Be pleasant to be around. Hopefully you wear pants and deodorant and things like that. Otherwise it might get tough to be hired in the room. There are some gross, weird writers out there, so the bar is lower than it is for the general population in some ways, but that's not a reason for you not to try. It is, in fact, a reason to at least put forward that bare minimum effort and therefore clear the bar that has been set for you. So don't be weird and gross. Be nice to be around is an important part of TV writing. Obviously, don't say controversial things in the room. Don't talk religion, race, politics, unless that is the subject of your show and the showrunner encourages you to. The nice thing is some rooms that I've seen will put a sign on the door that'll be like, free fire idea zone. I saw this on a comedy room I passed by one time. It was like, they sort of would engage this mode that they would go into a certain mode where they were like, now we can talk about any topic or share any story while that mode is active. And then when it's off, then we would refrain from touching on those topics. So some shows work like that. But in any case, I would just be ready to go wherever the staff takes you. Just don't, say controversial stuff that'll get you fired. You got to be good in a room. That's what that is essentially called. Great social skills, extroverted, receiving notes gracefully, giving great notes in a kind, constructive way. Being funny is really important if you're trying to be a comedy TV writer. If you're not funny and you're just like a drain in the room, then you're not going to be staffed on a comedy show for very long. Riffing off of other people and collaborating, being nice, presentable, respectful, and just having a thick skin. Like, don't be too offended by getting notes or even hearing, like, if you go in a comedy room, sometimes they're kind of vicious. They might say, that's the worst effing idea I ever heard in my life. They might, like, swear at you. They might ridicule you, tear you apart. Some people are jerks, and some people just are used to this rough and tumble world of comedy writing where maybe, you have to imagine riffing on each other becomes sort of a form of respect. So I would try to acclimate to that culture as best you can, whatever culture. You don't have to take abuse, obviously, but acclimate to whatever culture of the room is that you're in and be able to roll with different types of writers and just don't take things too personally. Okay, let's cover some of the basics. I'm going to move past a bunch of these slides. So to give you a quick preview, if you're working on logline, pilot logline looks like this. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. It doesn't have to follow exactly that, but those are the major questions that we're trying to ascertain the answers to. In terms of series logline, we're trying to convey that story engine and convey, interesting character, situation, and story world. It doesn't have to have as strict of a format as this. We don't need to know the inciting incident necessarily. We might if it's a premise show. In any case, we're trying to think our focus is on unique character and world and the situation that's going to promise many episodes in that series logline. We'll come back with some examples of those. Series loglines here. You can see if it's a premise show. Well, we talked briefly about this, but premise being a show that's more like a long movie. Status quo being a show that we reset back to 0 every week. A premise show logline is going to have a sense of the arc. So where are we going? Maybe in this case, you can get that idea from this character that has to launder $500 million in 5 years. 5 years, that tells us that's basically going to be a 5-year-long show, right? So a sense of what the walls or the boundaries are, or the central question that's trying to be resolved or anything like that are important to nail down for a premise show. And then for your status quo show, we want to feel like this is a great description of the type of conflict that will be in all the episodes. A black family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity, raising his kids in a predominantly white upper-middle-class neighborhood. It's not one situation. It is a description of a sort of situation of that you have potentially unlimited, hundreds, thousands of entries. Breaking Bad is premise: diagnosed with lung cancer, a meat chemistry teacher turns to manufacturing and selling meth to secure his family's future. Doesn't really have that end date time to it, because that's part of the show, is like how long does he have to do this essentially. So that one kind of works even though we don't specify the walls, but you get that sense of what kicks off the journey. The main character needs to do this difficult, seemingly insurmountable task, and he's doing it why. Here's the motivation, here's the urgency. That's series loglines. We'll look at pilot loglines. Oh, never mind, I don't have a slide on that. So a pilot logline is going to be a little more like a movie logline. So it's going to start with the inciting incident, telling us the first event that kicks things off, the inciting incident being an occurrence that your main character needs to respond to with a high level of urgency and engagement. An adjective protagonist is telling us who the story is about and who's the main character. If you have a lot of characters in your ensemble, pick the A story character, or pick a way to frame the conflict of the show that we would understand what the ensemble is and who it revolves around. The practice of this one kooky doctor or something like that, right? Must conflict before stakes. Conflict telling us basically the main arc of the obstacles that or the main thrust of the obstacles that your characters are facing throughout the middle of the story. And stakes are telling us what's the worst things could get. What would happen if the main character fails or doesn't act? Okay, so that's a lot on loglines. I want to maybe just very quickly recap the time slot, or time and format. So continuity format is what I'm referring to, not format on the page. Everyone's writing in the same format, which is screenwriting, American screenwriting format. So continuity format though. So half hours status quo means that we reset to 0 every week, and premise means that it explores one longer story that needs to be kind of unveiled piece by chapter by chapter. The expectation is usually half-hour shows will be comedic or action adventure, and they will be highly episodic. There's a lot of exceptions to that nowadays, though. You don't have to stick to that. 60-minute shows, you can write whatever you want, basically except sitcom. There's other formats, but don't worry too much about those. When you're writing for a portfolio, you typically want to be writing half-hour or full hour. Okay, in the coming weeks, so I'm not going to go into this too much now, but in the coming weeks, we will be doing things like story beats and scene cards, where we're going to be figuring out what happens in each part of first of all, what happens in each act, and then once we know what happens in each act, how do we get more detailed? How do we break that down into specific steps or scenes that you're going to delineate, figure out who's in each scene, what do they want, how do they try to get it, what's standing in the way, stuff like that. And then once you have a full paragraph for every scene, it's not that long if you are writing half hour, then we will do this thing called go to pages. Go to pages being industry jargon for you go from pre-writing to actually writing and executing the story rather than simply planning it out. Okay, what have I not touched on? I didn't get into genre, really. I mentioned that we should limit to 2 genres at the most, and I didn't get too into comps. I'll just say your comps can be almost anything, but at least one of them should be a show if you're writing comps for a TV show. And one of them could be, nowadays, a video game, or a Broadway play, or a web series, or something like that. Just remember, you don't get points if people don't know what it is. Okay, let's take questions on everything we've talked about up until now. Any of those elements that we're trying to lock down and figure out about your pilot? Any questions about the process or the overview of the class? Feel free to raise a hand or use the chat. I think I understand this question. So you're asking about the acts. So we're always writing in 3-act format when we're writing for American media. There's other formats that exist in the world and things that have been attempted in the past. Many story structure shapes are going to look basically the same, though. So the only tricky little wrinkle here is that when you're writing an hour-long show, given the way that commercial breaks have historically worked, they are broken out into 5 acts. Simply because there would be multiple five different act breaks with the commercials. But even though it's in 5-act structure is basically just 3-act structure, but with those additional little cliffhangers kind of built in. So yeah, we're writing in 3-act format no matter what. Pilot, feature, novel, whatever it is. Question, how would we format Google Docs to write scripts, or should we use a specific software? Yeah, you should definitely not be using Google Docs to write the scripts. I'm using Google Docs for outlining and for sharing pre-writing documents and things like that, scene cards, treatments, story beats, anything along those lines. And I use it to write novels, but not to write scripts. I would recommend finding screenwriting software. There's plenty of different softwares. Somebody just, thank you for that, Nacho. There's lots of free options linked right there in the chat. We recommend Arc Studio or Writer Duet. I use Writer Duet for the most part. I like Arc Studio a lot too. A bunch of the other ones I haven't really tried. I wrote on Final Draft for years, which is considered the industry standard, but it's kind of clunky a little bit. A lot of people like Fade In, a lot of people like Highland, a lot of people like Fountain. If you're not sure which one to pick, go with Writer Duet or Arc Studio. All right, let me check the chat for other questions. And if you're watching on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Kick, or someplace like this, then we can also usually see your questions. It just takes another minute for them to pop up at times. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions for the moment. Let's get your loglines ready to share. And hopefully you've got pilot and feature loglines, but it's okay if you just have one or the other. And let's get ready to share them. Let's instead of going into Story Engine, let's post what you guys have got. Who wants to get feedback on their logline? And if you're trying to decide between multiple ideas, maybe this would be a fine time to ask about that too, or any other questions that you've got. If something is preventing you from filling out title, genre, comps, time slot, and logline, then we want to know the questions, of course. Okay, Luke's sharing his. He's already gotten feedback on these. So you've changed the story a bit. Did you change the loglines to reflect that? Or is it still pretty much the same? Haven't changed it. Okay, so same logline, slightly different execution. Okay, I'm not seeing any other loglines in the chat. Does anyone want to just like ask questions about their show or tell us what are you planning to write or what would you like to write? Weekend says still working on mine. Outsider says still working. Well, now's the time to share. It's okay if it's not done. Now is a fine time to just brainstorm as well. Feel free to do that if you want. Weekend, can we talk about Goldilocks? There you are. Hey there.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
Yeah. So I was kind of all over the place there for a second, but yeah, we could talk about Goldilocks and try to figure out a logline for it.
Sure. Yeah. So
I would try to like nail down her character and like I'm looking again at the examples you had, like that were just up above here of like something like Ozark, like a fast talking financial advisor, right? So like, yeah, I was trying to figure out her character and I don't know how to describe. Like, I guess again, she like. I don't know. The word kind of capricious was coming to mind, but like also there has to be something about the fact that she doesn't respect people's like boundaries or property and will just kind of wander into their house.
Mm-hmm. So
I need the descriptors for her, I guess, is where. So I'm kind of hung up right at the front, right at the start.
That's okay. So let's not worry as much about descriptors as we will about things like character goal and motivation and things like that and what the rest of the cast would be. So just to begin with, I guess we would ask, so do you see this as a status quo show every week? It's a sort of new thing of the week?
I think so, but with a little bit of that, like, that, again, the cop, like, following her is the kind of thread throughout the season. So, yeah, but yes, I do imagine pretty much status quo, like, she's moved on to a new house, or, like, maybe she's leaving a house at the start of the episode and moves into a new house, and you get a new... I don't know. That was another element is like, I'm not really sure how to frame it. I kind of kept thinking of like framing it where like maybe you see the family or people that live in the house first and then she comes into the picture, or something. Cause you also want to see the people that live there and either how they react to what she left behind or maybe a little bit of their world before she comes into the house.
Let's ask this question. What's the genre here? Is this a crime?
Comedy, probably, with a little bit of drama and maybe mystery. And also like a little thriller, because here's another big element that I want to like get across is like she is really invading people's space. Like you do not want a strange woman sleeping in your bed.
Right.
You do not want a strange woman putting your clothes on and trying and like just like slipping into your life, kind of not. But like even if she's not doing it really nefariously, she's doing it. I want her to be doing it very innocently.
Innocently.
But
okay.
But like I want it to again, there is that element of people feel like I've been violated.
True. Is she a kid or an adult?
Oh, it's a woman. It's like I imagine it being like a woman. Like she's maybe 20s, maybe 30, but like a young woman.
Okay. And so, since can we go back to the genre question for a second? Because you mentioned four or five different things. And so we don't have to include every tone, right? Just because there are funny parts doesn't mean it's a comedy. So let's narrow it down. Do you really want people to laugh at a show like this?
I normally I do really lean into comedy most of the time, and when like I feel that there's a good joke, I feel obligated to kind of tell it, and I usually try to let that guide what's going on. But I also feel like there's a little bit of the thriller element just because. Well, here's another element, because again, I haven't fully figured out the full tone. Each house, to speak to genre, one of the ideas was it's kind of each house could be its own genre, right? Think about in the sense of like when you move into a new person's house, like when you go to a new person's house, that person has a totally different life, so maybe their life's darker, and it's not like, maybe she's living in a family of five's house for a day, and it's like a little bit more upbeat. But if she's like in, like a drug dealer's house or something, I don't know, you might get a darker tone. You could just kind of play with tones a little bit. I don't know if that's something to try to do, but
I would say actually I like where your head's at, but not to think of it that way, because you're not going to get more episodes, right? So you won't get to explore those different tones, and you wouldn't get it's like promising a game and then saying, but we won't play that game, and we won't get to actually try that out. So
so I guess the first one would be, so here was the idea that I thought, if you want, so were you looking here for the pilot logline specifically, or the series?
Either one, if you have them. I mean, we're in weeks. It's kind of like weeks.
So for the pilot, what I kind of wanted to play it where you get the idea that, maybe there's a suspicious neighbor or somebody that sees that she's living in this house and they don't recognize her, kind of a thing. So that was where I was going with. So I guess it kind of had a thriller element with comedy, but like, again, she is committing a crime as well. So that's kind of the genre I'm living in, but it's very much grounded in like I'm thinking it's grounded in reality. So it's not like, there's no sci-fi, there's no fantasy elements. It's just pretty grounded in reality. And then again, I think it's like kind of a comedy crime with maybe some thriller, because she's, again, those people could show up at any moment. Maybe there's always that lingering over her.
And so in terms of just like the almost anthology structure that you're working in here, you're sort of saying it's a family of the week. Every week there's a new family that is impacted, or
house of the week.
Right, house of the week. So I would think carefully about like, what does that family actually do as a result? Because that's the majority of your show. Like the Goldilocks thing is just like the inciting incident. Does she continue to interact with the family after that?
No, so I'm thinking like again, it's very Goldilocks where she just, I almost was thinking she has this like sort of just kind of way about here where she's just kind of not caught and she slips out, and maybe sometimes she interacts with the family, but she just kind of moves on before they get home or whatever it is, to the point where it's more about the aftermath of like, someone was in my house kind of thing.
That sounds cool, but it also means that your main character just won't be interacting with most of the cast, right?
I mean, it depends on what the episode is, but in this first one, I imagine it's very much like they're not home until like, I guess they could get home in the end and encounter her.
Well, then we can't have a whole show of your Goldilocks just alone, though.
Well, no, but I'm saying every episode's different, but I did imagine her kind of like evading, capture, so to speak. So it's just like she's got to make it out in the end of the episode to be able to move on to the next house, right?
It might also just help to think maybe she continues to interact with them after, like, if it's more than just I show up once and then leave and never come back and see them again. Have you seen Parasite?
Yes.
Maybe she could, like, kind of ingratiate herself into certain places, or she could live there long-term, like, unannounced or in a hidden kind of way.
Okay, because I thought of her more of like a roamer, kind of like moving, like, on kind of a thing.
You could do that, but
I
it
see
just makes it,
maybe if she's located in like a small town, she can encounter these people again.
Yeah, it's difficult to have the setup for your show being like the main character will not meet or interact with the cast. She just does one thing, and then we just watch the other people do something, and the main character's done. Like she doesn't have anything else to kind of work towards. So in terms of the story engine, I would maybe start thinking, how can you make a show with your cast that is all interacting with each other? And like we want to see scenes with those people together. Usually, I mean, there are occasionally reasons why you might not want to, or like maybe you have some characters that intentionally never meet or something like that. But just in terms of like the pilot has to set the mold of what the rest of the show would be like. You have to kind of like set the template, especially in a status quo type show, of what would like the average episode look like. So you want to get like a little bit of it's like a trailer for the rest of the show. So you might want to think of what
I think Act 3 to that point. So to that point, I think Act 3 is probably people come home and she's busted, right? Because it does play. I do want to kind of follow the Goldilocks. She shows up to the new house. She slips into their life a little bit, but like again, they're gone. It's just like Goldilocks. Like the bears aren't home for a minute, right? So you just kind of see her and who she is and how her personality comes out like reflected on the environment, or the fact that she's more of like a chameleon and that she just does whatever's in front of her and kind of tries everything out and sees if she likes it because she's just looking for the lifestyle. But then, yes, I guess when the people come home, that would kind of be like a thrilling moment where you can, I guess that's another part too that I've talked about and I'm not really figured out is what level of like a con woman she is, of like how she can talk her way out of these situations.
Yeah.
Or
and that sounds like
part of her mental state. Like, I haven't figured out.
That so you saying it's about how she can kind of like talk her way out of these tricky situations and stuff. That tells me that we don't want to save that to the end of the pilot. We don't have to do too much plotting right now. But just my suggestion for you is we don't want to spend 20 minutes with your character in a house by yourself and then have the interesting things start to happen towards the third act. You probably want to have the family come home in the first act, and then we see what happens from there. So
that's where I was thinking that neighbor character, right? Where the neighbor is getting suspicious, like, who are you? And then either maybe they pretend to be a kid or something like that. But I was trying to figure out, like, but again, it's like she's going into how, like, she's like has a way of like finding these like kind of empty houses. And she's trying to go in, like, whether or not caught, she could get caught. Maybe that's just the thing, is that she keeps getting caught, but weasels her way out of it.
Yeah, that could be great. We like to watch a real master of disguise, and we'll watch their lies stack up around them and things like that. So maybe that could be part of it.
I have a hard time finding a way to bridge like her, like, being like a con woman who just doesn't care. Maybe that's just the way to go, rather than her being like more naive or just having this like kind of hyper carelessness about her. I don't know.
I wonder if are you even a con person if you're not stealing? Like, is she trying to steal from them, or is she trying to like
No, that's the thing, is like she might eat, but she doesn't really steal anything, and she just like she just kind of like lives in your, she'll use your stuff. So like she might put a little wear on your whatever, like your exercise bike, or she might use your little bit of the gas in your stove or something to, I don't know, whatever it may be. She might eat a little bit of your food in your fridge. She like takes a little bit, like, she doesn't really steal, and like,
then in that case,
I didn't want to make up that.
Yeah, if so she's not stealing, then the risks of getting caught are a little lower, which is good for her, and it means that it would be easier to infiltrate because there's you have nothing that could get you caught besides them discovering that you lied or something like that. They're not going to like catch your pockets full of silverware or whatever it is. So you don't have to do too much plotting at the moment, but I would just think in terms of like the pilot needs to be like a trailer for the rest of the show, and we see like lots of the types of fun that we will be having. So if you're going to do sort of like that, if we're going to get tension and fun from your main characters in disguise and is tricking or conning people, we want to see that in the pilot. If you're going to have intense thriller type scenes like home invasion, sneaking around, parasite kind of stuff like that, we want to see that in the pilot as well. We want to get like a picture of what the show would be like week by week. So to that end,
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and definitely don't save the interesting stuff for the end. Like one character on their own cannot sustain us very long. So you got to be introducing other characters and having them clash and bounce off each other as a vacuum.
I gotta admit, I did picture the idea being like a little out of the box, a little bit.
Okay.
I admit that I'm trying to like. I wasn't going for like full like sick, but again, like having the one character. Another element, I didn't mention this, but like I imagine like this Goldie. I'm just calling her Goldilocks at the moment. I don't know what her name is, but imagine her like she'll be the kind of person like she'll go into the house, she'll appreciate like the art on the wall and like all your little tchotchkes and like random stuff lying around, and like in a way that other people won't, like your friends and even people that come to your house. You know what I mean? So there's like these kind of almost ambient moments of her just like taking in the house and like other, so like I feel like there is a moment of her alone in the house is a key component.
Sure.
Like major part of each house.
Yeah.
But then more can happen around that. But like
you can get a couple scenes of that for sure. It's just that
like
one character by
themselves.
themselves.
Gotta be like,
you only get so long before we're like, okay, now you gotta
you gotta give us something. Something's gotta happen. But that's where I was saying like different genres. Like, I've had like ideas for different episodes, but like,
but you can't really. I would say
of like well, just real like you have like okay, she sees like a family packing up for vacation. Like I thought this were either like Thanksgiving or Christmas type episode, right? And they drive off, so she's like, "Oh, I can go into that house," and she goes in, and she's kind of making herself at home, and then they come storming right back in, and they're like, "The road's closed, you know, we got it." And so now she's kind of like trapped in the house, like trying to hide while this family's like, "Oh, well, now we're gonna have Christmas dinner here." And like so and then maybe like whether or not like a kid finds her but she is trying to hide, and so she's she's not going to like reveal she I guess she like so I guess there's that con element to it, or like that knowing that she's shouldn't be there kind of a thing.
Yeah. Pretends to be the kid's imaginary friend to get out of consequences.
That could be, maybe she gets really creative and crazy with it.
Tells the kid she's
or
racist.
But yeah, like different scenarios, just like different scenarios. But again, like maybe she does just encounter people. I don't like just obviously someone's gonna catch her. But I think that's probably the best thing to happen in the first episode is like somebody catches her.
Sure. Yeah, we might understand like this has been her lifestyle up until now, but we're starting the show here because this is the time that something went wrong, or this is the time that she got caught, or this is the time that somebody caught on or like realized what she was doing and called her out on it, or something like that.
Yeah, I think this would probably be the one that triggers like the cop to start kind of pursuing her. That's a good point.
Sure. Yeah, you're getting sloppy, Goldilocks. That kind of thing. It sounds cool. I mean, it's very, very unique, very original. I love the idea. It seems like you might just need to do some more of that brainstorming and thinking. How could this be a show? Even if you're thinking there would be a lot of different tones in this, I would steer away from the idea though that like every episode would be a different genre. Just because you can't have a show where every episode's a different genre, because then no one would make that show or watch it because they would never know what they were going to get. Obviously, I realize there are some weird exceptions like Atlanta or things like that where it's like every episode is like, I don't even know what you're doing, dude. Like sometimes you just like was that a horror episode at some point? Like I don't even know what Atlanta's doing. I know there are exceptions like that here and there.
No, and I think that's where like I just feel like the idea of just like kind of going into a different house every episode can just lead to kind of infinite possibilities.
That's true, and the nice thing,
examining people's homes and lifestyles and the way they live too. That's a big part of it.
But you could think like, but if the situation always makes us laugh, then you can explore any number of different possibilities, and still it's a comedy.
Right. And I think you're at the heart of it. I think it would be like a comedy.
I see.
Comedy drama ish thing going on.
I gotcha. You might also, I haven't actually watched it, so somebody can confirm if this is the best comp or not, but there's a show called Poker Face. Have you heard of this one?
I did watch Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne.
Yeah, that I believe. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that the structure of that one is sort of like the main character doesn't show up right away. We start off kind of like seeing a mystery begin to unfold, and then like she comes in a little bit later to solve it.
It's Rian Johnson craziness. Yeah, you find out the part of the mystery is where is she, you start realizing part of the mystery is where is she already in the story at this point, because she's already there. Yeah, it just doesn't get revealed until later. But yeah, it's he definitely takes some weird narrative crazy liberties there, but it works.
Maybe Poker Face means Parasite could be good comps to start out with.
Yeah, that's not bad. I do like the Parasite angle.
Yeah, that's a dark comedy too. So that has that.
I kind of you saw Blue Ruin, you said?
Yeah, I've seen all his movies.
Blue Ruin, at the beginning of Blue Ruin is where I really kind of is where he's taking a bath, he's having a nice bath. Then you hear the mom and the daughter come home. He grabs his clothes, sneaks out the bathroom window, and runs off the street.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that might happen,
Right, and he's doing it because he's essentially homeless. He's like living in a car, basically, and but your character's doing it because she wants to.
It's just
right?
Yeah, just kind of like just exploring how people live and trying to find what maybe works for her in a weird way. So, yeah. But what I've discovered in talking about it here is I want her to be a little bit more, have a little more agency and realize, I'm doing something wrong, but I have kind of a code, so I'm not like stealing anything. I'm not breaking too many. I'm trying to maybe leave behind an improvement where, I nailed up that loose board in your staircase or something, too, and they realize.
That's like what I mean? Like a gremlin. She's like the helpful house goblin.
The Mogwai, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. There's a lot of elements that I'm trying to incorporate into it, but I think for the first, I'm not thinking in pilot form, and that's what you're getting me to think about here. Is that first episode's got to slap, and it's got to like tell a bunch, like a whole mini movie full version and then say, but yeah, there could be more of this like every week.
Yeah, it's not easy. So don't expect to
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
If it's your first couple pilots,
No.
don't expect to get it right.
Yeah.
Good brainstorming though. Any other thoughts, questions, or things you want to discuss there?
No, I'm gonna try to be back next time. So I'm gonna try to fill in the title, genre, format, time slot, comps, and everything. So I'm gonna try to have that next time, and I'm gonna try to keep up. So
great, awesome. Well,
Thank
we'll be
you.
back same time slot next week.
Excellent.
We'll be glad to see you then. Let's keep
All
it
right.
rolling. Thank you, Weekend.
all right.
Let's. You also got some suggestions in the chat, so make sure to read those. All right. I am scrolling through. Is this Mario? No, he's just giving comments on somebody else's logline. I see a logline from Foster. Hey, Foster. I've invited you to the stage. Are you able to click that green button to accept it? Should be at the top of the screen. Foster, are you there? Okay, I'll just read it out and give comments. Normally it's easiest if we're able to ask questions and sort of help you out in that way, but I'll just, because maybe they stepped away and want to watch this recording back later on YouTube or something like that, I can take a swing at it. So, the question, or the logline is a show called Waning Dependency, sci-fi drama, no comps listed yet. Pilot logline is an undercover operative's cover is blown before her mission even begins. Huh, okay. Before the mission... Why would you even have cover before the mission begins? Oh, I guess you're sort of saying she gets, like, deep cover, like, early before getting the orders and stuff like that and is in position. But, like, undercover as what? I'm having a little trouble picturing... You mentioned I feel the logline is too short. Yeah, so it's just kind of missing some information, I would say. An undercover operative's cover is blown. Like, a spy's cover is blown. I'm with you there. But where are we? When are we? What is the main character trying to do? Like, now that the cover is blown, what's left? Do we have to escape the country? Does your main character have to reestablish or fix that secret identity somehow? Do they have to kill the person that knows about them? Do they have to make an alliance with them? I think we just need a little more of a sense of what's the main character, what's the action of the show, and give us a sense of place and time. Hope that helps, Foster. I'm glad to discuss more with you if you would like to speak up. Okay. Anyone else? Logline? Premise? Brainstorming for your pilots? Or any questions about anything we talked about today? If that's all, we may be wrapping up early. That's too bad. We have half an hour. We could do so many log lines. Oh, hello. Come on up. I see a hand raised.
Hello. Well, I came up with a title and a log line today, like during this class.
Great.
And it's called On the Cutting Room Floor. It's sort of a sci-fi thriller, and the log line is an assassin can travel through television and bring people into the TV with them, where they have until the credits to kill them or else die, with each kill giving them a clue to how to escape the limbo they are in.
Whoa. Okay. Do you have that written in a way that you can post it and I can read it?
Yeah, so sure. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay. An assassin can travel through television and bring people into the TV with them. Them? Why them? Or why not him? Is it a non-binary character, or you just haven't decided him or her?
I just hadn't decided at that time when I'd written it.
Okay, let's just pick arbitrarily for now. Do you want to say male or female?
I'll say him for now.
Which one?
Him.
Him.
No.
Okay. So we have an assassin can travel through television and bring people into the TV with him, where they meaning him or they meaning the person that he brought with them. He
Him.
has until the credits to kill them, or else he will die. Is that right? Or else the assassin will die?
Yeah.
Okay. With each kill giving him a clue how to escape the limbo that they're in. How to escape? Wait, I thought he could travel through TV. You're saying he can only go in, he can't get out?
He's stuck in the TV. So he can travel through TV, but he can't travel in the real world.
Oh, okay. So an assassin that's in like a kind of a, is he like cursed or something?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, so he's cursed to be stuck in TV land. Is that right? Or TV world?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe start there. If you say an assassin can travel through television, then what we're going to be thinking is a guy in the real world has this magic power. What you're really saying is that we're starting with him stuck in a limbo world. So he's cursed to be stuck in the world of fiction, or the world of TV, and he can bring people into the TV with him. So he can sort of like ensnare people and trap them like Freddy Krueger style and like drag them in.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. And what's the rest? He has until the credits to kill them, or else he will die. Okay, so that means that he's killing people every like half hour or full hour, basically?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. With each kill giving him a clue how to escape. Well, it's interesting. I mean, is he really an assassin?
Well, I had this idea of... I'm not fully sure about the clues, but I'm thinking that he's got a handler, and he's actually been put there by someone, and he's given the specific person he has to kill every week, or every now and again. So he is an assassin because but he doesn't know why he's killing these particular people. His payment is like the clues to the puzzle kind of thing.
Doesn't he have to kill 24 people a day?
No, it's just he sort of, while he's not in the television, he's just sort of in this limbo space.
Oh, okay. So it's just when he travels into a show that the clock starts?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I get you. All right, so it's a pretty unconventional type of assassin. Normally we expect an assassin is someone who gets paid money, or is acting for a political goal, and is killing people in order to enact some kind of political change, usually some form of, change in government, or to make a statement or something like that, right? That's what an assassin does. So it could be that he's doing that. You might want to think about including that in the logline if you can make that all fit. Like, he's cursed by a mysterious employer, or trapped by a mysterious employer to live in this TV limbo, and now he has to commit these murders day by day, or else he will die, I guess. Or will he just be stuck in the TV forever, I wonder? Or will he, something like that? Is it that is the risk really that he'll just, will he stop existing when the show ends, I guess?
I think the idea is, if he doesn't accept the mission, he doesn't risk anything, but he gets trapped. But if he doesn't do anything, he's not going to get anywhere. So he has to take a mission if he wants to escape this limbo world, but every time he goes on a mission, he puts himself in danger and has this... He's like where he could die, basically.
Okay. And so just because we're in the brainstorming phase, you don't have to get anything locked down at the moment. This is all just idea stuff right now. So I guess just some questions for you, or things to think about that might expand the premise of the show. What would be, I would think maybe, if you're trying to make this a premise-based show, meaning that he's going to be working towards a longer-term goal, then you might think, what is that first clue that he gets in this episode? Or maybe you don't have to know the answer to the mystery necessarily, but you might just think, what is he going to learn or find out that is going to... Because if it's a mystery type format, we're going to be watching for information. So maybe think what some of those interesting reveals might be. And also think, what is some of the fun and games that we want to have in these shows? Like, because if he can only draw one victim into each show, then what's the show we're going to be spending most of our time in the pilot? You don't have to know. You can say, I have no idea if you want, but like, obviously...
Well,
go ahead.
I was thinking of a Western, because I had this... It's like the classic thing of the person like following someone, they like going after their man, through like the rugged plains, it's cheaper to shoot something in like out in nature in America if it is in America that they're making it. So I was also thinking that I know you said don't think about it as if you're writing this for a television, but I was thinking that if it was for television, they'd probably be more likely to choose a pilot that would cost less to produce than one that would cost more.
You're right, but I would also consider even a cheap TV show is going to be like $50 million. It's like a TV show is a massively expensive thing. It's good to keep these things in mind, and when you are going into when you're doing screenwriting, you always have to be thinking of budget to some extent, but it's just not our top priority. So go ahead.
But the other thing is, it's easier to do something like a Western well than it is to do a sci-fi on a like a spaceship. With like, you just have to go outside to do a Western. To do like a sci-fi, you have to do like make the corridors. The corridors have to feel right. You have to do this and that, and it can very easily feel like cheap and fake. And I feel like if you want your first one, I think you want your first one to feel like wow people. So I know a Western isn't exactly the most groundbreaking thing, but the fact that you don't, it will look right, kind of thing, I think is the idea. I don't know.
And do you think each episode would revolve around one assassination, or is he doing multiple?
I'd probably think one per episode. And I think it might be that each time you also see a little bit of the target as well. So it isn't just him. And I feel like he's sort of this almost like Terminator-esque figure that moves through the series, and he's like single-minded. He's just there to kill. That's it. Whereas the person he's going after is someone they interact with the place. They're almost there in the film or the series or whatever else it is. But he's not. He's just going straight through it to get to them.
So I didn't see any comps on your initial, or did I? No, you were just telling. I don't think you wrote it out. You were just telling us about it. But let me, unless I missed it, I was going to suggest some comps to think about. So it sounds a little bit, if we're going to be hopping between, especially if we were going to be hopping between shows within one episode, which could be a lot of fun. I mean, remember that if we're trying to express what the show overall would be in just the pilot, you probably want to have him in multiple shows, not just being. It's because the whole show isn't him being in a Western. So you would think that part of the fun is channel hopping or whatever, right? That's like Wreck-It Ralph almost. Have you seen that one?
I haven't.
So it's a kids movie, obviously, so maybe a different tone. But he's going around between different like arcade. He's like in the world of cyberspace, so he's going between different arcade games. Or in the sequel, he's going to like different apps and websites on the internet and stuff like that. Other comps, Pleasantville. I think I just mentioned Pleasantville in a different class yesterday. But this is a movie about two people that go inside their favorite TV show and are sucked into the world of that show, kind of thing. And I had one more. A Quantum Leap, maybe a little bit of that sense of Quantum Leap if he's like going into somebody else's life, a different genre, a different setting every week.
Okay, yeah.
So just some ideas for
the
you.
The only thing that I'm... If I didn't, because you cut out there. Like I say, the only thing that I'm not sure about is if I show the personalities of the people he's going to kill, because I feel like the audience will be on their side, and if you've got the audience so it would mean the audience would be against the main character, and having the audience against the main character in the pilot might not be so good. I don't know.
That's a good point. You can play with that into like how likable actually is he. That can be in question in the show. But I will also say the way most Hitman media does this is you just make the targets terrible people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every Hitman game. You ever played those video games? It's like, today 47, your target is a puppy abducting, weapon dealing, drug running, like it's just like name like 9,000 terrible things they've done. And then the audience likes when they get murdered. It's fine.
Yeah. I suppose that's something to play. I think maybe in the earlier ones it could be a bit more black and white, and then when you go on, it becomes a little bit more grey, and then maybe that's part of the thing is he's sort of going further and further and deciding how much his freedom is worth, and should he keep killing these people.
You might ask a question like, what is he trying to get back to?
Yeah.
Does he have a family out there? Does he have an important job he needs to do? Something worth considering. Okay, well, anything else you want to ask about, or questions you have about the course or about writing in general?
I don't think so.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for sharing. Hope that was some helpful thoughts. You've got
thank you.
2 weeks to nail it all down, and you've got a strong start.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see one from Outsider. Hi, Outsider. You say I have no mic, but it would be great to hear my insight. Okay, no problem. I'll try my best. It would be helpful if you could still type answers to the questions, though, just because it is tough to give great feedback unless we can speak back and forth. Let's take a look at these log lines. Okay, and he says I'll try to. Okay, sounds good. Or maybe he or she, I'm not sure. So let's look at The Outsider's The Wrong Shirt detective comedy. And there we go. Okay, I don't see any comps. Maybe you can try to come up with some comps. Oh wait, no, you do have them. The Office meets Fringe. That doesn't sound like a detective comedy. That sounds like a sci-fi comedy. I guess Fringe has a little bit of that detective. I mean, they're trying to solve. They are trying to resolve questions, but if I would pick a detective show as one of your comps, if that is the hook. Okay, series logline. A mysterious package that arrives uncovering secrets about the future of the town as it starts to change. As they start to put new clothing on the racks, the group of kids discover the town is changing. They're trying to figure out if it's changing for good or bad. They start to get to know more of the customers and learn about the different community members during very awkward and comedic situations. Okay. I am not sure I fully understand I think we should first of all try to boil this down to just one sentence. It's totally fine that it's a bunch right now, but it's hard to know what's important here. A mysterious package arrives, uncovering secrets about the future and of the town as it starts to change. So as makes it feel like those things are happening at the same time. I'm not actually sure what's causing what to happen here. It sort of seems like you're saying there's a small town and a group of kids are your main protagonists, and one day a package shows up, and when it does, although we don't reveal what's in it in this logline alone, you're saying that the town starts to go through some sort of strange sci-fi transformations or metamorphoses or something like that. Weird stuff starts happening. Weird sci-fi stuff starts happening in town after a weird package arrives one day. Is that right? Yes. Okay, great. So yeah, try to boil this down. It feels like you started telling us what was happening, and then you almost went back and told us about where we were. Put new clothing on the racks. The group of in the series logline, you don't need to focus as much on these individual events. Although you might, obviously, if the series is all kicked off by one thing starting, but we don't need to like start saying as they start to do this, as they start to put new clothing on the racks, the group of kids discover the town is changing. They're trying to figure out if it's changing for good or bad. So if it's not even clear if it's good or bad, that doesn't feel like a super urgent start to your show. Normally we would expect changes that are happening and threatening this kind of status quo would be bad, and the main characters are trying to stop them. If it was good, then why is there a conflict, or what's the problem, right? So I would imagine it was a problem of some sort. And then, so this is kind of like a group of kids, main characters. You could do that sort of Stranger Things like friend group as your leads if you want. It sounds like they're trying to discern where the package came from or what it is, why these weird sci-fi strange things are happening, and how to stop them is usually how these shows work. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but my recommendation would be really boil this down and try to bring us something as simple as that. Let's look at pilot logline. So Erica's the main character. Okay, so she's a kid, right? She's the leader and the most academic student from the high school. Yes. Her and her friends try their best to be polite to all the customers. They're trying to figure out if they should leave their hometown or move away and pursue their dreams after graduation. That sounds like a different show. That doesn't quite sound like the show about the mystery of the package that started making weird stuff happen. So I think you might need to kind of connect these ideas and make sure that it feels like it's in the same world. I would guess the pilot logline would be something like, Erica's after school job, she discovers a weird package in the trash cans. And after opening it, you would tell us the first major weird thing. After opening it, her mom and dad disappear. Now she must team up with her friends to find out where they went and how to bring them back. See what I mean? So I would maybe give us a taste of what that weird... You promised us a sci-fi, so we're looking for maybe what is that first interesting sci-fi premise that we have to look forward to. So don't stick with just the characters and the drama in the pilot logline. That can kind of be in the background. That's kind of subtext. That's happening while your characters are investigating an interesting mystery, but it sounds like this is not quite a detective comedy and more of a sci-fi mystery. It could have a comedic tone. Like, you don't need to write comedy in the genres just because it's funny. If you do truly see it as a comedy, maybe it's a mystery comedy or sci-fi comedy, something like that. Maybe a little more craft in these things, so boil them both down to one sentence. Maybe start with the inciting incident. So when Erica discovers a strange package in the trash can out by the convenience store, her mom and dad turn into gerbils, and now she must team up with her school bully to stop them from eating all of the newspaper. See what I mean? Something like that. Really simple. Here's the problem, and here's how it affects the main character. Here's how they try to solve it, kind of thing, for the pilot logline. For the series, I would, again, boil it down to one sentence, and you don't really need to tell us that there would be a lot of awkward and comedic situations, because we kind of already grasped that from your description. You told us this is a comedy, so we expect there would be funny situations. So you don't need to waste your words on that. Again, go back to the basics of what's going on. Cause and effect. When this thing happens, it changes the characters' lives like this, and now they're trying to do this. So focus on like character and specific concrete goal. Okay, so that's all I've got for now. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for sharing that. Keep working at it. The wrong shirt. I'm curious. You have intrigued me with the shirt thing. I'm like, why is it called the wrong shirt? What kind of strange shirts have been conjured by this sci-fi element? I'd love to know. So you got me intrigued enough to want to know more. Good job there. Thank you for sharing this. My hair got all fuzzy. Look at that. That's strange. Oh, I fixed it. Nope, not quite. Let me tune that down. We're almost at the end of our time for today. We will open it up to last questions. Filters. There we go. All right, let's open to last questions about anything we talked about today. The course overall, the career of TV or screenwriting, pilot loglines, or any of the stuff we've talked about, title, genre, comps. What have you guys got? And we're in our last few minutes, so anyone can raise a hand and speak aloud if they want to, or you can use that text chat. Nacho, anything you wanted to tell people? Well, I see a few folks are typing. You can continue to type your questions, but anything you want to leave the nice people
Yeah,
with?
so in about 5 minutes, we're starting up Friday night table reads / Australia, New Zealand, Asia. So everyone's welcome to join, and you have a little time still to submit your own script. It can be, from a feature, pilot, short, whatever you got.
Thanks, Nacho. Okay, so last questions. I see a couple in the chats. Can you or someone share the link to join the bootcamp? Okay, so to join the bootcamp, you can subscribe at scriptcamp.net. Just scroll right down here where it says enroll now. Yeah, script camp done. Thank you, Nacho. Here's a question from Outsider. How are the different streaming platforms affecting series? Is one place better than the other to reach a specific audience based on the story? I would say definitely yes. Different networks and different streamers have different mandates of types of shows they make, different genres they're interested in, different tones, different budget levels, all kinds of stuff that would affect what show fits best on what network. And sometimes there's different networks have a completely different take on how a specific show would go. You can only imagine the CW take on something like Game of Thrones would be a completely different show than the HBO version, right? So these are things to consider, and you can write with that in mind. It's usually, it's really just out of our hands and not exactly up to us what streamer we would end up on. Even if you did get to the point where you're, pitching and selling a show, you kind of have to, pitch to multiple places. So I would maybe consider, does my show feel like it would be basic cable or premium cable? And if so, then you can write with that in mind, right? If you have lots of F-bombs and nudity and stuff like that, that's going to feel like premium cable. If your character, if it's squeaky clean, you have nice little act breaks, and it feels like every act break ends on a big cliffhanger, maybe you've written more of a kid's cartoon, which are totally fine to do as well, right? Or you could be like, I'm aiming for that Adult Swim kind of adult animation vibe. Maybe that's your idea. So you can keep that in mind, and you should be writing something that's like the shows that you watch, and try to watch a lot, and to have a good idea of the kind of thing that you're that's why comps are so important. I'm trying to make something with a tone like this in a world like this. So watch a lot and definitely read a lot, because in addition to the basic homework of trying to nail down some of these essential elements of your script, there is a website right here, sites.google.com/tvwriting. It has a ton of pilots for you to read. And the goal for next time is going to be to try to answer those basic questions that I will leave us on to remind you what we're trying to resolve. And also read a script. Read a full pilot from beginning to end for next time. You can read US, UK, comedy, drama, animation, whatever you want, but read a complete pilot from beginning to end. Besides that, your goals are to answer those basic ground level questions. Where did it go? Title, genre, format and time slot, comps, series logline, pilot logline. And when we say format, again, we're referring to continuity format. The options are premise or status quo. Okay, plenty of stuff coming up. Look at that big old slate of classes. A bunch of free ones too. So we hope to see you guys soon at your next Script Camp class or event. If you're still in the boot camp, or if you are in this boot camp, your goal for next time, answer those questions, read a complete pilot, and be ready to talk about it. Just the basics. What did you read? What did you like? What did you not like? What did you learn? It's not an essay question. We just want you to be reading consistently every week. If you're just starting to attend, make sure you come to the other events and stuff as well, like anything back here, or anything like the swaps and table reads, like the event that's starting right now. So feel free to stick around for that if you want. If not, we have more classes this weekend. Tomorrow we have novels from 12 to 2, then lab from 4 to 6, and then I'm teaching 11 to 1 on Sunday for features, and there's a table read at 2 p.m. on Sunday. All right, thanks guys. Hope to see you soon. Hope to see you back here in Pilot Bootcamp, and we'll catch you at your next Script Camp event or